The July 4th weekend brought celebrations of freedom across the U.S. It also brought out many of the Republican candidates for president hoping to set off a few fireworks of their own. Ephraim Graham has more.
Presidential hopeful Michelle Bachmann rolled into Iowa for her first trip as a presidential candidate. She attended church, a prayer breakfast, and parades.
And my goal is to take the reasonable, fair-minding voice of Iowa not only to the halls of Congress, but now to the White House, where it's been missing for far too long.
Newt Gingrich traveled Iowa's 4th of July parade route, and so did Governor Rick Santorum.
Trying to build a real solid grassroots effort, with our focus being, being in good position come February.
John 2012! John 2012! John 2012!
John Huntsman pushed to build his grassroots campaign in New Hampshire, where he and his family marched in a parade and met with small groups.
It's a long effort. It's a marathon when you approach it that way, but in New Hampshire, that's the only way it's done. It's done handshake by handshake.
Republican frontrunner Mitt Romney shook hands along a parade route in Amherst and then took aim at the president in Washington.
The recession is deeper because of our president. It's seen an anemic recovery because of our president. The people who want the status quo can vote for him, but people who want real change and jobs for Americans are going to vote for us.
Businessman and presidential hopeful Herman Cain skipped the parades. Instead, he threw out the first pitch at the Fisher Cats game in Manchester. He lost 2 high-level staffers in the last week, but says his campaign is still on track.
We're going to be opening up our office in New Hampshire.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Minnesota lawmakers got an earful from constituents at July 4th parades over the ongoing government shutdown there. Some shouted support, but others voiced opposition. State parks and industries like logging are shut down because there's no funding to keep public lands open. The state has a big deficit problem. Newly elected Republicans say voters gave them a mandate to deal with the problem, but their budget was rejected by Minnesota's Democrat governor because it didn't raise income taxes, and that's what caused the government shutdown last Thursday. A federal judge temporarily blocked Kansas from enforcing its new abortion regulations. Those rules make it more difficult for clinics to obtain licenses to perform abortions. They would have forced 2 of the state's 3 abortion clinics to stop. A U.S. district judge ruled that the requirements would hurt abortion clinics by denying them business and patients. He also says the rules would hurt patients by preventing them from having abortions at the provider of their choice. China's controversial one-child policy was supposed to control explosive growth in the world's most populous country. But it also led to an unexpected practice called gendercide. Recently, the campaign to end gendercide collided with Washington's drive to cut spending. John Jessup explains.
China may be America's fiercest competitor on the world stage, but pretty soon Chinese men will be competing against each other to keep their family lines alive. By the year 2020, between 40 to 50 million Chinese men won't be able to find wives.
Today, India and China eliminate more girls than the number of girls born in America every year.
Human rights groups blame it on a modern-day genocide against baby girls. They call it gendercide.
These girls tend to be aborted, killed right after birth, abandoned, and trafficked.
China's not alone. Many Asian cultures like India, South Korea, and Vietnam place a premium on boys, which leads some couples to abort their babies once they find out it's a girl. But it's also practiced in places like Armenia and the Republic of Georgia. Chai Ling founded All Girls Allowed to address the problem and raise awareness, calling special attention to China's one-child policy, which they say has resulted in killing about 50 million girls.
I believe that China ought to be today at The Hague answering crimes against gender, crimes against humanity for what they have done.
The assault also targets the United Nations Population Fund, which promotes China's one-child policy. Critics say the UN arm is complicit in China's forced abortions and sterilizations. So when Republicans asked the public what program should be on the chopping block in their U-Cut program, All Girls Aloud suggested the UN Population Fund.
And we just quickly mobilize our prayer warriors and also our supporters. We said vote to vote, and we have 2 days to vote, and then we were able to get the votes in.
President Reagan cut back on it. George W. Bush cut back on it. It's one of those issues that unfortunately President Obama reinstated. And our hard-earned tax dollars need to go to more beneficial things.
If the House passes the bill, it would still have to clear the Senate and be signed by the president, but that doesn't appear likely. For Chai Ling and her supporters, they see it as a win-win. It's not only about cutting spending and saving money, but it's also about saving lives. John Jessup, CBN News, Capitol Hill.